Hello, America of United States. You are listening to the DMZ America podcast because it's not DMZ Belgium. Fuck that place. It's May 31st, a Wednesday in the year of our Lord 2023. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist on the left side of the political aisle, joined by
Scott Stantis coming to you from the right. And speaking of our Lord Jesus Christ, we missed last week. It's my fault completely, utterly, and thoroughly because I went off to my yearly retreat. It's a Catholic retreat. You take a 3-day vow of silence. It's pretty awesome. I love it.
There are people who would like both of us to take a 365.25 day a year vow of silence.
Yeah, but they can go to hell. And I know about these things because I just spent 3 days studying it. No, it really is an amazing. Ted and I have talked about this off the air a lot and it's fascinating. I think it interests people because, you know, especially the vow of silence. I went many years ago. My wife's cousin's husband invited me, and I went, and I thought it sounds interesting, you know, because Ted has joked on the podcast, and he's not kidding because it's happened. Where he'll call me up, and I'm in the background. You hear, "Oh, I love Gregorian chants. I love
like,
Latin
hello?
Mass.
Is this the 1400s?
Well, it's Alabama, so it's not far removed. Anyway, so I go on this retreat. I thought one of two things is going to happen. I'm going to either really just love it, or I'm going to fucking hate it. And I love it. I mean, it's transformative year after year. It's just great. So so I apologize. It's my fault. We did not have a podcast last week.
We could have done the podcast. It just wouldn't have been. It would have been very one-sided. Or you would have been like,
Exactly.
What do you do if you like stub your toe at like the vow of silence?
Yeah, there's no punishment, but it's just you do it because
they silently beat you.
Yes, they have silencers on the cat o' nine tails. Yeah, no, it's you know, it's there, and there are some assholes. Explain this to me, Ted. These guys go to this thing and they don't stop fucking talking.
There are people who just can't follow fucking rules.
Yeah, it's why do it then? Why come? I mean, that's my point. I mean, it
right,
just makes
you shouldn't want to be there. Like up until now, when you suggested that maybe I'd be interested in this, I haven't gone because I didn't want to be quiet for 3 days. If I decided to go, I would be quiet for 3 days. You know, I mean,
yes,
this
precisely.
isn't complicated.
No, I mean, and it drives me crazy. So there's guys who are yapping away or whatever, and it's just like, and anyway, I follow the rules. I enjoyed the hell out of it, and yeah, that would have been a great podcast, Ted. We should kill them all. What do you think, Scott? It's in southern Louisiana. It's a gorgeous grounds. They have these 100-year-old oak trees with the Spanish moss. It's right on the Mississippi River.
Any gators?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Yeah. As if that's normal.
Well, it is in southern Louisiana. Yeah, the property goes pretty far back away from the river, and there's a creek. And they say don't go back there at night because
it's gonna be very hard to maintain your vow of silence while you're in the death roll being dragged under the riverbank.
Exactly. He died
stored to, you know, they do that. I know you know this, right? They store you under the riverbank, and then they keep you there under the water, and then they come in and feast on you from time to time as they feel like it.
Yes. Which, so they don't
want
you to.
Much like the capitalist dogs feeding on the carcasses of the proletariat.
There it is. Just so.
Well, Scott, so we should talk about
stuff.
We should talk about things. We should talk about we should talk about talking. And nothing's been more talky than the debt ceiling debate. So basically where we are is that the Rules Committee narrowly passed the debt ceiling compromise that was arrived at by Biden's negotiators and Kevin McCarthy's negotiators. They're headed, as we speak, to a vote by the full House of Representatives. We need to, according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, pass the debt ceiling thing no later really than what, Sunday? It's got to be signed by the president, because Monday is the drop dead deadline when the checks start bouncing and the US government runs out of money, which would be bad. Of course, I just want to be clear. It's not like the US government would not be able to pay anything. It's sort of like if you fall short as a household, and let's say you have $1,000 less than you usually do, you could probably pay a bunch of your bills, but you wouldn't be able to pay all of them, and you would choose which ones to prioritize. Right. So that's where we are. And before we hit record on the pod, you pointed out that Elizabeth Warren, the senator, the progressive senator from Massachusetts, has suggested that the debt ceiling bill should just be, the debt ceiling law, which is about 100 years old, should just be abolished.
Yes.
Now,
you and I are going to disagree on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Passionately, because you've mentioned this before, and I thought about it and went, well, maybe we should, because it seems we have this little kabuki dance every year or two, and it's a pain in the ass, and it's not very smart way to budget or run a government. But here's my take.
It's also dangerous. I mean, look at what happened. It was really shocking. I mean, people have already forgotten, but during one of the two debt ceiling crises under the Obama administration, a deal was struck at the last possible moment, but nevertheless, the ratings agency Standard & Poor's decided to downgrade the U.S. Federal debt from its pure, perfect AAA rating to a lower rating. And everyone was shocked in Washington because they said, well, we met the deadline and we cut a deal. And S&P said, well, yeah, you cut a deal, but this brinkmanship made us really nervous. And it shows that you guys might default. The fact that you even thought about defaulting makes us nervous.
Yeah, that makes, I mean, yeah, you can, I mean, any reasonable institution would see this and think it's preposterous. Now that you mentioned it, I'd forgotten about that, quite frankly, but now that you mention it, it did cut, and some outlets actually crunched the numbers. How much? It also crunched the numbers because it took billions of dollars. You pay more for your debt when you have a shitty.
You do.
But here's my take on the debt ceiling. It's a governor. It puts some fiscal responsibility and some fiscal culpability, which I think is really important. I was speaking with a friend about this morning, and he brought up a very salient point, and that is countries that don't have debt ceilings are,
which is to say, almost all of them,
almost all, but Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece,
France,
they don't have it.
Germany.
I know, but I'm
England,
saying they didn't default.
Denmark,
and have their economy spiral down the crapper.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the debt ceiling. I mean, all these other countries, most countries don't have anything like this. I mean, look, for people who don't understand it, it's like basically the government has, just like a household, has input of cash and outflow of cash, right? It has income, and it has expenses. And when its expenses exceed its income, you have a budget deficit. That budget deficit gets added to whatever overall national debt there is. And so the debt ceiling is an artificial constraint where you yourself, so it's like sort of like, so Scott, let's say I make $100,000 a year, and then I run up $120,000 in expenses that year. And so I put $20,000 on my credit card. Well, the debt ceiling is like me calling up American Express and saying, well, guys, I know I put $20,000 on the credit card and I can easily afford to pay it, but I've decided I'm going to not do that. I'm going to cap it at $10,000. And so I'm going to need to find future cuts in my budget next year to make up for that $10,000. Can you wait for me to pay you until then? That's literally what this is.
I think it's, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, all I'm saying is Congresses of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, I'm sure you will agree, are equally big spenders. They, Democratic majority Congresses spend money on social programs and defense. Republicans spend money on defense and tax cuts for the rich. And that's where the money goes. They both spend shit tons of money. They vote on it together. It passes. The president signs it. And so the debts have been, incurred completely with the agreement and acquiescence of both parties. Then after the fact, the Republicans, only the Republicans so far, they come forth and they say, well, this is totally irresponsible. What do you mean? Who are you to be talking about irresponsibility? You're like the two drunks in the gutter, and one of you gets up and is like, look at you drunken alcoholic fiend. It's like, you're both the same. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna now, we demand fiscal discipline, on your stuff. And it's sort of like the married couple who are like, we're running tight, we spend too much money, and the husband's like, honey, you buy too many shoes. And I think that's the problem here. And she's like, you go on too many fishing trips. And I think the shoes are an essential expense. I mean, that's what's going on here. And the Republicans are getting their way, and they're getting budget cuts sort of that really they shouldn't be getting. They should negotiate this shit when they do the budget.
Oh, that comes right back to the point I was trying to make earlier, which is to have an adult approach to budgeting, and a better analogy, the credit card analogy would be, you have a $20,000 limit. Well, you charge 25,000 this year. So you call American Express and say, hey, listen, can I bump up my right. the limit? They say, okay, yeah, I guess. Okay. Just this once.
Right.
You could not be more right, Ted, in terms of when the budget is being budgeted, to have these assholes come and actually do the job that we elect them to do, and look at this and look at the expenditures. I mean, it is preposterous. And this is coming from someone who's conservative. It's preposterous that somehow defense spending is sacrosanct and shall never be looked at and will not be cut. I mean, in fact, insane.
It's increasing dramatically. I was just watching Fox before we came on, and some Republican congressman was bragging about the $800 billion increase in defense spending.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost, I think it's $850 billion now. It's almost $1 trillion of our budget goes towards paying for defense, for Aegis destroyers, which are costs about, how much are those? This is $1 billion each, roughly. And the fact is, our enemy going forward in the foreseeable future are guys, in jihad, little caves somewhere with a Quran down their pants. And that's what we're fighting right now. It's not Russia. It's not China. Sorry, guys. Ukraine doesn't count. It's not China. It's not, we aren't having a major conflict with anybody.
With a nation state.
We don't need, when they said things like, as a history nut, Ted, that, the build up to World War II, we had the 13th largest Navy on the planet. I mean, and we're going, yeah, because we didn't need it. I mean, It made sense not to have a big Navy because we didn't need a big Navy.
And France, on the other hand, had, I believe, at least the second,
I think you're right.
maybe the largest Navy in the world.
Yeah.
For all the good it did to them, considering that Germany didn't come in by sea. So,
well, and in fact, that wonderful book you passed along to me, it talks about how the German government took over the French Navy, and they were going, sacre bleu.
Well, what they could, right? The French scuttled, the Brits bombed it at Malzy Beer, and then what the Brits didn't scuttle, didn't bomb, the French scuttled at the port of Marseille.
Yeah, there's still apparently, according to this book, there's still an awful lot of it left. Regardless, my point is that we should have, we can be honest and just say, when we say everything's on the table, everything should be on the goddamn table.
But also, why do we have this fucking law, Scott? I mean,
because we spent
budget negotiations.
Ted, you just said it. Because these guys, these men and women in the House and Senate can't control themselves. They spend like drunken sailors.
Well, this isn't controlling. This is not controlling anything. As the Republicans themselves on the right will complain, this budget includes $4 trillion in increased spending. okay, in deficit spending. So all that's happening is that it's shifting it's the budgetary priorities that are changing in favor of the Republicans. For example, on student loans, right? Biden very lamely pushed through an executive order, which was a very flimsy, duct tape and baling wire kind of attempt to provide student loan forgiveness, because in the typical Biden Democratic way, he didn't want to actually expend any political capital in getting it through Congress. And it's very sketchy that he may not probably have the right to do this. So there's all these lawsuits, and I don't think anyone's gotten any student loan checks. No one's actually gotten the forgiveness. It was just like something that he talked about and said that he was working on. And anyway, the point is now even that tepid effort has been thrown under the bus. And I have to say, politically, I think this is going to be a big story. The Times has a piece that ran yesterday, I believe, where they interviewed 11 Democratic voters, and they asked them about their opinions about the president and their perceptions. It was a focus group, and it was very emotional and like touchy-feely. But what was striking to me was that the young voters all said that the only thing they really cared about was student loan forgiveness. It was the only reason they had supported Biden. It's the only reason they would turn out to vote for Biden again. Now that's gone. And I have to say that jibes with my experience of talking to voters under 35. They all were like, yeah, Biden's old, but student loan forgiveness. And like, now that's gone. And whether or not you agree with student loan forgiveness, and there's certainly an argument against it, I don't agree with it, but there's a strong argument against it. The point is, young voters are pissed. They're going to be pissed. They're not going to show up to vote for Biden next year.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but I mean, that makes perfect sense. The student loan thing, correct me if I'm wrong, during COVID, they suspended payments, right?
That's right. And that's what's just gone away. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's going to go back to the way it
that's
was.
fair. I mean, unemployment is low. You can get a job. You can, the lockdown is over. If you're still wearing a mask, you're a moron. Yeah, I get it. But I mean, we have a major fucking problem in this country where if you attend a 4-year private school, it is not at all unusual that you have an $85,000 a year tuition bill. And that, Jesus. Now put this into perspective. When I went to Columbia University from 1981 to 1984, and then again from 1990 to 1991, the tuition in full, the whole thing, room and board, student activity fee, tuition, everything, all told, 19 meals a week. I don't know why they didn't give us 21, but they didn't. They knew we'd sleep late on the weekends because it was the 80s and we were all hungover. Anyway, the point is that was $13,000 when I started in 1981, $16,000 in 1990. Today, that is $88,000. Now, I guarantee you that if you made in 1991, if you made that amount of money, $16,000, that same job does not today pay $90,000 a year. I guarantee that. Wages have not kept up with
they haven't.
Wild, out of control increases in college expenses. So, this is the only country in the world where college is such a for-profit thing. I mean, you pay a tuition in England, but it's not anything like this. You pay tuition in Canada, again, even lower. And if you go to France, that's where it's just a couple $1,000s a year, even if you're not French. So it's a fucked up problem. It's like our healthcare system, and young people, they're at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. They don't know how they're going to fucking pay like $1,200 a month. How are they supposed to do this?
Well, I agree. And so now with the payment, here's where, so student loans, first of all, I'm like a lot of people. I mean, there's people who, regardless of how you feel about the actual policy, I still do not believe that President Biden had the authority to do this. I think when it gets to the Supreme Court, they're going to go, oh, no.
Because the thing is, it's literally right. Congress has the right to appropriate funds, and and you can tell that's why presidents have had to have illegal slush funds for things like Iran Contra and Watergate, right? I mean, even to scare up a few $100,000, it was like they had to finagle. So here, effectively, Biden's dipped into the treasury to the tune of billions of dollars, all with the stroke of a pen. Of course, he doesn't have that authority.
So let me on the student loan forgiveness programs. The one that Biden was talking about was a state-run program, correct? I mean, run by the federal government. So
that's right.
It
doesn't apply to it doesn't apply to the people who got those plus loans, like the private ones from the banks that are like 17% or whatever.
And that's where I kind of cringed when they talk about loan forgiveness, because somebody put that money up. Not, on the federal government, it was like you, me, and the people listening now in the United States. But with the private ones, like you mentioned, I have to admit there's a part of me that feels like, hey, these guys put the money in good faith as a loan. Good faith, you can.
Good faith if you think charging usurious interest rates is in good faith.
Well, why we've never had controls on that in this country is beyond me.
We should. I mean, what should be regulated is what bankers call the spread, right? The spread between the cost of money to them, which is basically prime. So let's say prime is 5%. If prime is 5%, that's how much it costs them to get money from the Fed. And if they're lending it out at 30%, which is the rate of like a high interest credit card, they're getting a 25% spread. And trust me, as a former banker, they don't need that. They don't need that at all. They can they can still rake in profits with a 5% spread. No problem.
Ted, I'm sorry, that second yacht doesn't buy itself.
Well, it's a mega yacht, I'm afraid. Yeah. The one with your new wife and her image carved out on the bow like a mermaid. Remember that? Like Jeff Bezos's wife.
Did he do that?
He had apparently the bow of his new mega yacht has one of those like mermaids, but it looks just like his new wife, Lauren Sanchez or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah. Although, as Zoolander said, maybe it's not a mermaid, it's a merman.
Well, your yacht would have Clovis on the front, I assume.
Well, that is true. Although it would be nerve-wracking because cats really hate water. So even just the idea that his image could be so exposed to the spray of the sea would be disturbing.
Well, then I guess you won't be doing that.
No.
Okay, well, you and I, disagree on.
What is the purpose of the debt ceiling? I mean,
the debt ceiling is
just negotiate this thing.
Well, I agree, but they can't do it. That's why
that's ridiculous. So then we do. So basically, we push the country up to the brink of a phony default. I mean, we have the money. We're just choosing not to pay. What?
Well, do we have the money? I guess we can print it. I guess you have as much money as you want.
Yes.
What this does, and I think it's an important thing to have, is it's a governor on spending. And it makes you stop at least for a moment and think about, hey, maybe we shouldn't be spending this much money.
So you're saying it's like when I itemize my deductions, when I do my taxes, and I'm like, man, I sure spend a lot of money on cheese. I should probably go easy
exactly
on that.
The same thing, Ted. Exactly.
No, it is kind of like that. No, when I do my itemized deductions, I'm like, man, I eat out too much,
Do you deduct cheese from your taxes?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Although from my French taxes, obviously it's automatically
the fromage withholding.
But it's but that's French cheese is subsidized for French citizens, so that's different.
Is it really?
Well, in a way, I mean, sort of. Like I was shocked when I was visiting Martinique, which is, as you know, a full French département. It's like it's the same status for France that Hawaii has for the U.S. And anyway, you're in the tropics, and there are bakeries, of course, and you can get all the usual baked goods, but they're really not that good because the air is not right. It's
Right.
humid. And so,
Hot.
because it's your God fucking given right to have a Parisian made croissant, the French government flies in at their
No,
expense baked goods
no.
from Paris daily. And
That
they're sold at the same price as the local price. Um, Also, they subsidize wine because it is your right as a citizen, even if you live in New Caledonia out in the Pacific, you are entitled to have 3.5 euro awesome bottle of wine that would run $30 here.
oh my God. I'll never
Because
forget
that's
when
France.
we were in Paris. This is before Airbnb, but it was an Airbnb type thing for about 3.5 weeks. And so that's enough time to kind of get into the groove of, and there's a good local grocery store and they had a €3 bottle of wine and that was subsidized. Now that you tell me, I go,
It sure was.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Cause
yeah.
it was amazing. I mean, it was like I said,
That's
three
not the shit
euros.
you get at Trader Joe for $3. That
No, it's not the $2 chuck.
two
It's
buck
not,
chuck, like suitable for like cleaning cleaning the battery acid off your car.
it's a 2 euro. What's a nickname in French? I'm sorry, I
C'est
just
très
totally blew
chic.
that joke.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
had no idea. So yes, that's why the debt ceiling's in place, Ted, because why it was created is to give some kind of responsibility and some kind of governor, some kind of tapping of the brakes to profligate spending. And it doesn't work,
no, it doesn't work.
but it's still nice to have it in place. I would, if Scott Stantis of Alabama votes no on removing the debt ceiling.
Ted Rall of New York votes yes. We will agree to disagree here, Scott.
All right.
As
Well,
as has happened before.
such a little thing too. It's so funny the things we disagree with. Like,
Well, I don't know. It's not
no,
such a
no,
little
no.
thing. I mean, it's a little law. It's so insignificant. But
But
I mean,
the repercussions are huge. And as you say, if they do default, it really screws things up, and it
well,
is
honestly, even
extremely
if they
expensive.
don't default, it could screw things up. They could still Fitch, the I think they're the successor agency to S&P, or maybe there's just another company, but they've already indicated that that government debt is on a watch list and that they're inclined to downgrade it now.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, the
Okay.
thing is, they played too fast and loose. It's reckless. They went too far.
Well, and it's important to point out that the people who went too far was during particularly the Trump administration, when they just spent like fucking crazy.
They sure did. They cut a lot of taxes, uh, and raised other taxes. They raised my taxes. I was not pleased.
Did they?
Yeah, yeah. Well, all of us in the blue states, if you owned a home, which I did at the time, there's how you can deduct your local property tax from your federal tax return.
Mhm.
Well, the Trump administration imposed, I believe, a $10,000 a year cap on that deduction, and that was not so that's not very germane to someone who lives in, say, Iowa. But not many people pay that much in property taxes. But lots of people in the New York area, Florida, people who live in beach communities, they do pay much more than that. In New Jersey, it's not at all unusual to pay $15,000-$20,000 a year in property taxes.
Jesus.
So that, if you lose a $10,000 worth of your $20,000 deduction, that could effectively cost you $3,000 or $4,000 a year that you weren't spending before. Thanks, Donald.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean,
it was targeted on purpose to go after Democrats.
Yeah, well, and down here in Alabama, I think I told you we have a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And our property taxes, I was speaking to a cartoonist friend of ours named Matt. We'll call him Matt because that's his name, he's from England.
That doesn't narrow it down though, because there's like 5 million Matts who do.
There really are. Well, I'll narrow it down then, because he's from Britain originally, but he's been in the United States long enough, so now he sounds Australian. And so we were having a conversation, and he was living in Connecticut at the time. He goes, how much are you paying for your property taxes there? I go, well, I'm paying, oh gosh, last time we paid it was $900. He goes, oh, no, $900 a month. That's not bad. I go, oh, no.
That's per year.
That was a year, and it has since gone up. I think our property taxes are now at $1,300 or $1,400 a year. That's how much we pay here in Alabama.
Yeah. Well.
So yes, it was targeted to you, Ted, specifically.
Yeah, and actually against Clovis.
The Clovis tax.
Yeah, that's why he's skinny. Thanks, Donald. All right, so what are we talking about next? I forgot.
Already?
Yeah, well, I'm old.
Yeah, see,
I'm
here's
like
the
5.
thing.
All right, we're gonna take a break.
For those of you who don't know, Ted is hosting a daily radio show now on Sputnik and doing a great job with his co-host Manila Chan. And it's a terrific show. If you haven't listened to it, do yourself a favor. But I have to believe now that once you're done with your day and all of a sudden you're looking at doing a podcast and doing more talking, you've got to be like you're like brain fry.
It's a little bit too. I always do look forward to this though, because it's a different format. We don't have guests very often, and it's much more freewheeling. And of course, we can curse. So
yay.
We can be ourselves. Anyway, all right. So
coming up next, we're going to be talking about the state of the GOP and Democratic primaries. Presidential primaries come up in 2024.
Okay, stay here.
It'll be fun. Don't go nowhere.